and go.
Yeah, I'm Mike, and I'm here today to talk about the role of women in the New Testament church. I'm going to be asking people to ask me questions about what they know. So, does anyone have an initial question on the role of women in the New Testament church?
Just in regards to the Book of Acts, women in the Book of Acts.
Yes.
Can you tell us about a few of the prominent ones and what they were doing that show us how they were received in the church?
Okay. In the Book of Acts, there was, right from Acts chapter 1, one of the women that were there was Mary, the mother of Jesus. And there were lots of women in the day of Pentecost. And in fact, it was the day that it specifies in Acts chapter 2 that the Holy Spirit fell on everybody. So women and then the early church had to figure out how to spread the gospel. So there was Priscilla and Aquila. Priscilla was they were apostles. So they were an apostle team, husband and wife team, like we were talking about earlier. And they would have helped run the church, and Priscilla would have helped encourage women as the gospel spread like wildfire. There's also a woman named Lydia and a few other women who were house leaders. It doesn't say whether they had husbands or not, but they were like house church leaders, and they it was their job to run their little house churches, which they sprung up all over the place. And it also it says that some of the more prominent women in Greek culture actually financed part of the church. So that was also a big role for them. Did that answer your question? Good. Any other questions about women in the New Testament?
Well, women in the New Testament, even though they might have come under the influence of Christianity when it first started, were they still subject to cultural experiences and roles which allowed them not necessarily to be as free as they probably would have wanted to be?
That's a very good question. Basically, as the gospel spread away from Jerusalem, they were more influenced by the Greek culture. So, in Greek culture, women didn't have a high standing. They were seen as like an accessory to the husband. So, and paradoxically, the men were able to go and see prostitutes, live immoral lives, do what they wanted. And there was no consequence when it came to them. So the women were either in good stead or in bad stead. So in bad stead, they were prostitutes, they were the people who would just do anything. So and those sort of women were very, very loud and didn't bring honour. And honour was like an economy in the Roman world. So if you didn't have honour, then you won't be listened to and you'll be disregarded. So the New Testament churches, when Paul says you've got to dress nice and act nice so that the gospel will have honour. Yeah? That is my understanding of it.
In the Jewish culture, though, if a woman had become Christian and rose to a position of a house church leader, say for example Lydia, how would the Pharisees view that?
Oh, the Pharisees wouldn't have had a bar of it.
So there was a cultural, not only in the Greek culture, but it was also in the Jewish culture.
The Jewish culture was a different story because women weren't classed as second-class citizens. They had a different role. And the women's role was mother, cook, and servant, basically. And it was frowned upon that a woman could learn from a man. So it's a good example when Jesus, in Mary and Martha.
Yes.
So Mary learned from Jesus, but that wasn't her role in the traditional Jewish family. Martha was actually performing perfectly for her rabbi. And she was doing the right thing in Jewish culture. But Jesus said, turn the tables. He said, look, she's doing the right thing by learning from me. And there was that. I would suspect that wouldn't be the first time. The fact that Jesus had women around him that chose to leave everything and follow him. And that really was countercultural.
What can you tell me about Mary Magdalene?
That's okay. That's a good question. Now, people mistakenly say that she was a prostitute and that she was dirty and all that sort of stuff. The Bible doesn't say that. All it says of Mary Magdalene is that she was healed of demon possession, and then she started following Jesus.
Yeah, but didn't he say that she was immoral with many husbands?
No, that's a different person.
That's a different person.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mary Magdalene served Jesus and became, the Pope has recently came out and said that Mary Magdalene was the apostle to the apostles.
That's right.
So she served Jesus. She was the go-to. So everywhere that Jesus went, so did Mary Magdalene. So even at Jesus' death and crucifixion, when all the men turned from him, she was there at the cross. So she went to his burial, she hung around, and she was the first person that Jesus spoke to. When it comes to Mary Magdalene, it proves that Jesus is our example, how we should rely on women and trust women, and also to include women in ministry for their talents. The Bible isn't misogynistic. It actually supports women in their roles and what they do best, as does the whole gospel. So what it means for women today is that they should be led by the Spirit, like the men. They should be reading their Bible, praying, going to church, being fellowship like everybody else, and seeking God on what He wants to do, and being comfortable enough to move into leadership with the purpose of advancing the gospel. And the Bible doesn't say anywhere that a woman can't be a leader. So, any other questions?
Is it acceptable for a husband and wife to lead a church with a woman being the head of the man as a leader?
I would say to lead a church, I would say if it's a non-independent church, like a Baptist church or a Church of Christ, they have independent leadership. So then the woman would be the leader over the man. And it's just my point of view. Possibly not. But if you go into an Anglican or a Catholic church, if a woman is the pastor or the rector, then her leader, her head, then becomes the bishop or the leader over that area. And that...
With the gender man.
Yeah. I will read you a response from a woman pastor who supports the view that a woman should have no authority over men. So this woman is a pastor. She writes, "Because I want to honour 1 Timothy 2:12 for my good and the good of the church, and because I believe it presents a fairly clear boundary about women teaching authoritatively in the local church, I generally turn down invitations to speak on Sunday morning because it's me having authority over the congregation. Just as I defer to my husband when he is providing spiritual leadership for our family, so I defer to God's desire. It is the church fathers who deliver the doctrinal instruction and direction for my church family. That being said, it's up to the individual church body to make that call. So it's up to, if that church doesn't have that tradition, and tradition is one of the elements of our faith. So if their individual tradition accepts that, then no one can say anything different. So tradition just means what your church has come to believe from its foundation. So that will change, tradition will change from denomination to denomination. But today it's pretty well standard that women can be in any leadership role in any church. That's it. Thank you for coming. Thank you.